Hello, everyone, and welcome to Connexions Resource Centre. And I am Nat. I am Connexions Communications and Outreach Coordinator. And today, I am thrilled to welcome both Danielle Lanyi and Amir. And today, we are talking about AMI-Québec and supporting caregivers. So just a quick bio about Danielle. Danielle has held public office and represented the English-speaking community in the health and social services sector for over 20 years. She has served as commissioner for the Western Québec School Board for 16 years and as a board member for the former Agence de la santé et des services sociaux de l'Outaouais. Thank you for coming on, Danielle. We are thrilled to have you on again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And as for Ella, thank you so much for coming on, Ella, and talking with us about AMI-Québec. And you, Ella, have been with the AMI-Québec as Executive Director since 1990. And under your leadership, the organization has become one of the principal resources in Quebec for families struggling to cope with mental illness. In addition, you've been providing direct support to families with AMI-Québec and are working extensively with healthcare providers on various partnerships and collaborations. So we are thrilled to have you on and thrilled to talk to you about AMI-Québec and all the supports that you are offering families with mental illness. So thank you so much for joining us. And I will say a quick goodbye, but of course I'll come on afterwards and I'll let you guys chat.
Thank you. So, Ella, it's great to have you here this morning. Very much appreciated. We've heard about AMI-Québec for a number of years, so it's really nice that you're here this morning to be able to talk to us in person about what you do. So if I understand correctly, it's really for caregivers who have a family member or a loved one or someone who has a mental illness. So if you could just, maybe explain what the mission is, and then we can look at what kind of services and programs that you offer. And again, serving the English-speaking community, right?
That's right. Well, first of all, I have to say that, officially or formally speaking, we are not really designated as an English service provider.
Okay.
AMI-Québec is the first family association that started almost 43 years ago by 4 couples that happened to be English speaking, that got together to help each other because, it was in an era where families very often were viewed as the culprit, as the reason for mental illness or mental health problems in their ill relatives. So they got together and the rest is history. So, over the years, a number of years later, more family association mushroomed in Quebec. And today there are close to 40 family associations. But AMI-Québec is the first association, and I think that it may be even the largest. And there is an unwritten understanding that we are serving predominantly English-speaking communities. So, some of our programs are also offered in French. But if someone is coming to us and he is more comfortable in French, we would encourage them to take advantage of other associations that are offer more programs in French, and vice versa. They will refer people to us if they're English-speaking. So, again, administratively, we are responsible for Centre-West Montreal, not even for the entire island of Montreal. But because of the reality of English-speaking communities, some years ago, we have taken it upon ourselves to try to reach out to English communities throughout the province. And I think that, many people don't even realize that we are not a provincial organization, so we are not even regional organization. But we are doing our best to try to reach out to families. So I think that this is really the first thing that I would like to say. When we decided to do that, we have had many conversations with NPIs and with CHN and so on. For some time, we offered teleconferences, conferences over the telephone. Other years, we offered some video conferences and some webinars. But I think that with the evolution of the internet the connection and the facility with which people can access information, some of these programs that have been quite effective years back became less attended. So, today we don't really offer any of these programs that we have offered 10 years ago and 5 years ago but we have many events on Facebook, for example.
Mhm.
And so, we really have different ways to reach out to people who live outside of the island of Montreal. And, again, when I'll speak about the different programs, I hope that people in outskirt regions can realize that there are some options for them to reach out information from AMI-Québec.
Yeah, because one of our challenges, and in living in a region compared to living in Montreal, where you have that critical mass, where you have a lot more services, our services here are fewer. They are definitely less available in English. For instance, TELAID here refers people, and we refer people to the Ottawa Distress Center. So, and that's one of our particularities, and bordering with Ontario. But just going to show that, for us in the regions, it's very different living in Montreal. So so I'm curious to hear more about your programs and
Okay.
support groups and.
Right. So, first of all, as you said earlier, our principal target audience are caregivers, families and friends who have a relative with mental illness or mental health problems. We don't really ask for a diagnosis. I mean, sometimes during counseling we would, but, nobody needs to have a certificate in order to access our services. Everybody is welcome. But so, caregivers are our principal target audience, and we will design our programs to address their needs. But many of the programs, many of the support groups, and many of the other programs welcome also people with different mental health challenges. So I think that, it's important to recognize, over the years, we have really become, not necessarily intentionally, but by practice, we have become a clearinghouse of sorts. People call us from anywhere, from everywhere, for any kind of question that is closely or remotely associated with mental health. And, the one rule of thumb that we do have is never to say, oh, well, there is nothing we can offer you. In many cases, there is really not very much we can offer, but at least we can try to guide the person and to suggest that maybe they will call here or there, or maybe they will go to our website and so on. So we really do our best not to leave anyone without any response.
And that's a huge service that you're providing right there. Because for people, for the average person, even for myself, sometimes when I'm looking for resources, it's not that easy to navigate the system. And so just having that support to be able to find the services, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, no question about it. Again, our ability to refer to resources in regions is limited because we are not really familiar with resources. But as you say, they are very often non-existent, or, there are not many resources. But, very often the person who calls us call for not necessarily with a very concrete thing, but, with a need to be heard, to be listened to, and maybe to be guided. So, this is really what we have been doing for all these 40-some years, and we continue to do that. As I said, people really refer to us from CLSCs, from CUCs, for all kinds of things, which are really not within our expertise, but we have an expertise in listening. And I think that in guidance. And I think that this really goes a long way. I think that, again, when you compare our organization, or like your organizations and many others, to the public system, for example, when you go to the hospital, there is a very clear-cut goal. You're going to have a test or to cure an illness or whatever. Our goal is much more nebulous.
Yeah.
It really allows us to be more tuned in and try to help with, short of curing the illness. I think that we can do a lot, to comfort the person, to help them to get the information, the resources that they need, and so on and so forth.
And sometimes also, I know in our experience, when people call, they're not always that clear, and they just need some objective person that they can speak to without feeling judged, and then being able to formulate really better what the issues are and what they're looking for, and just being able to sometimes ask the right questions is really important.
I think that what you're saying is really super important, because I think that very often people, again, because of the stigma and self-stigma, I think that when people are searching for information about mental illness, etc., sometimes it really takes a great deal of courage to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that, sometimes really the first welcome is critical for the person coming back or not. And I think that you're absolutely right. I think that we are really, there's really no judgment. There is no blame or shame, which, very often people are coming with already. But I think that there is really, we are trying to understand, to validate, to encourage, and to, really help with the person with whatever, the issue is. And as I said, sometimes they don't even know how to articulate it.
Exactly.
But I think that it's important that we or you or, other organizations are there to help the person, articulate his needs and what he's looking for.
Absolutely. And we, refer a lot to info social for, mental health, but other problems as well. But sometimes people even need that support in terms of, making that first phone call, because there's that apprehension that people have sometimes of the public system.
That's right.
And just being there to support them through that initial phone call will, hopefully go a long way in terms of helping them to get the support.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you asked about our programs. So, many of the programs are really directly targeting caregivers. So we have support groups. We have about 12 support groups every month. Wow. Now they are all on the telephone, but they are going to be transitioned to video conferencing. In the support groups, usually it's 3 Mondays every month. And every Monday, when we do have a support group, there is one support group which is for family caregivers and friends only. So it's a closed group. Most of the other groups are mixed groups. For example, we have a group for anxiety or for depression or for bipolar. It's for a mixed audience. It's for people with bipolar, but also with family members. So, there is really an opportunity for people to access whatever group they are looking for. I should maybe say now that with the outbreak of the pandemic, we transitioned all our programs to remote platforms. And in fact, I remember it was Friday, the 13th of March, that we were sitting at the staff meeting in our, office. And it was at the time I said, I don't think that we are in a rush to move home very quickly. This was the 13th of March. On Monday, the 16th of March, we moved all our support groups on the telephone. And on the 17th and 18th, we moved home. So things really accelerated very fast, and we moved home, and the rest is, we know. So we were really very lucky. No, I don't think that it's luck. I think that it's really because the organization has been so cohesive, so effectively working together with the small team that we have. We managed to move swiftly and effectively to remote platforms. And we didn't miss one program. Everything moved, as I say, to, telephones, Facebook, and Zoom-like. We are working with Google Meet, but it's basically video conferencing. So all our workshops are now on, some of them are on Facebook, and most of them are on video conferencing. So this, again, allows people from regions to join anything that they want.
Right.
And, it has really taken a great deal of effort on our staff, because, in addition to make sure that we sustain the programs and so on, we are also the techies in the background. So for every, if we have, for example, 3 support groups on a Monday night, we have to have 3 support techies, 3 staff members who are behind each of these groups, just to make sure that there are no glitches. So it's really, I can't really say enough about how staff got together, with such an engagement and commitment that really allowed this to happen. So, again, nobody really expected or hoped for the pandemic, but this is something that I think taught us a great deal of how to be creative and imaginative, and how I think it could be helpful for people who live in regions and otherwise wouldn't have the same kind of programs.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we experienced exactly the same situation that you did. It was turn around on the dime very quickly, adapt to the situation, because you see the needs don't stop just because COVID happened. As a matter of fact, the needs even increased. So yes, I mean, it really was great to have, even though we have small team as well, to have such a, efficient team. And like you say, we're doing the tech support as well. So,
right.
We don't have that luxury of having somebody doing that for us. So this has, I guess, been one of the silver linings where now it's more accessible for regions to be able to take part in your groups. And I really encourage people to go to your website and to look at everything that's available and to join in, because I think it's really important when you have a service that's available to use it, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And so I'd really like to encourage people to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you focus not just on mental health. We focus mostly on mental health. And we know that, the first few months, I think that everybody was preoccupied with physical survival.
Yeah.
And I think that, mental health to some extent was pushed aside, especially with the slogan that we are all, in the same place. Yes. Yeah. I think that, we all experience some anxiety, but I think that, people who are prone to mental health challenges, it's interesting because, I heard from some people that their relatives, at least in the short term, felt rather okay, because I think that maybe for the first time, they felt that everybody understands what they're experiencing all along.
Right.
So everybody's anxious now, so they are not alone. But
yeah.
It seems to me that this is really not going to last forever. I think that, again, people who are experiencing different kind of mental health challenges may very well experience a heightening of their issues. And again, many people who are just, mainstream, who didn't really have any special mental health problems, may experience, this kind of anxiety and depression and so on and so forth. So we will see. And it will surge. There is no question in my mind that we will see much more concerns about mental health.
Oh, absolutely. And everybody's situation has been, somewhat different depending on what your living situation or what your living arrangements are. Different challenges, whether you're a family together 24/7 or whether you're a single person alone 24/7. I mean, there are impacts across the board, regardless of your situation. So I agree. I think we're going to see a surge and that there will be an impact, following COVID. So,
right. Yeah. And I think that, on a more a global or general level, I wonder if this is really going to make a dent in the political arena, because we know that mental health is not at par with physical health.
Absolutely.
We really, when we compare it to other provinces, when we compare it to other countries, it's not even close. And, I wonder if really this outcry, which I think nobody can ignore at this point, can make a dent in the recognition that there's really no health without mental health.
Exactly.
If we are not really recognizing that mental health is as important as physical health, we are going to pay for it. So I really do hope that maybe there is a silver lining, on that, level too. But I think that it really, it's our responsibility to make sure that our voice is being heard, and there are people, in leadership who do listen.
Yes, I think there's a lot more work there. There is some work that's being done, and there have been some studies that have been done, but it's still nowhere near enough. And that stigma still, remains today, very much so. I mean, that's something that's been so deeply ingrained in our culture, and it's going to take still many years before we, overcome that. So, and you can't stop, and it's very much like public health as well takes a backseat to physical health. Physical health seems to trump all. And then you've got public health, all that prevention aspect and mental health that fall underneath that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time if we had public health and mental health on top, perhaps the needs and physical health wouldn't be so great at the end of the day, because we all know that has such a great impact on physical health.
It's really interesting because I believe that in Ontario and in Alberta, there is it's not a ministry of mental health, but there is a designated, very strong branch that actually deals with mental health. And I believe that in BC, there is a ministry
Wow.
that deals with mental health. So I think that, there again, we don't really have to invent the wheel. I think that there are all kinds of things that we can learn from, other provinces in other countries. We know that, the percentage that we put into mental health is half of what is being done in other countries. So there is a lot that can be done here too.
Absolutely. Another issue I wanted to bring up just quickly, because we don't have much time, is you recently did a study on young carers, which I found extremely interesting, because our focus, especially in Quebec, has been on caregivers for seniors, but we haven't really not dealt with younger caregivers. And I was just wondering if you could give us some of the highlights that came out of that study.
Well, first of all, just to say that it's really a couple of years ago that I'm not even sure what really triggered my interest, but I started to explore a little bit and, find out what's happening, because it really resonated with me. We are talking about usually, adults caregivers. I think that, in Quebec right now, especially with the outbreak of the pandemic, I think that there is a huge emphasis on caregivers of elderly. But, we're talking about adults caregivers. And then it just dawned on me after I read some articles and some studies that there is a whole army of young carers, kids and youth between the age of 14 and 25, and very often even younger. They can be 8 and 9 and 12 years old, who are serving as young carers. They are the last one to define themselves as young carers, and the last ones as their care recipients would define as young carers. But, de facto, they are, in addition to going to school, they are going sometimes to the pharmacy to bring medications, or they are feeding the mother, or they are, staying with grandfather who has Alzheimer. You name it. There are all kinds of things that young carers are doing. And, the reason why they don't really see themselves as young carers, this is what they know that they need to do. They're a family with needs. And again, we are not even talking about immigrants, and refugees, where very often, the family doesn't speak the language, and there is a 12 years old who has to translate. So this is another aspect of young caring. And this is in addition to all the challenges of, transitioning to a new culture, new country, etc. So this is really, it's a big group. I think that there are studies, the countries where it is most developed is the UK. There are policies, there are support. It is really much more developed. We held, in March 2019, we held the very first Young Carers Symposium here in Quebec. And it was really very interesting. And it appeared to be resonating with many people who were, in the room. And there were people from the education sector, from the community sector, from the health sector. So, what we are trying to do, first of all, when we talk about young carers, we are not talking only about young carers in the context of mental illness. We are talking about young carers in the entire continuum of living. And we say these young people, there are certainly some benefits for being young carer, like, they're learning by doing, the importance, to distinguish between what things may be more important and less important. There are, binds that they are creating, priorities, relationship with family. So there are really very interesting benefits, but there are lots of possibilities for compromising their own social engagement, their academic achievement, their health, physical and mental. So there are lots of risks involved in being a young carer. And this is exactly what we're trying to do. We really try to shed light on, first of all, on the phenomenon, first of all, to recognize that this is an issue, to raise awareness to the needs of caregivers, young caregivers, and ultimately we hope to have influence on policies and be able to help, with other organizations, develop some services for young carers. So it's a big, and the survey that you just mentioned, we just held in the English community, basically corroborated exactly how we felt. There is very little awareness, and there is practically no services to speak of.
Yeah. Well, I know that the APUIs have now broadened their mandate. So for their helpline, it's no longer just caregivers for seniors, but it's caregivers across the board. So it's all age groups. But I think that there's so much work to be done in terms of just bringing this awareness, out in the community so that the young carers do get the support that they need. Often if a student might not be doing well in school, or, there could, and who would think that could be a reason behind it?
But I think that, this is a very important point, because I think that what we want to do ultimately is not to wait until the child is not doing well in school, but to be proactive, for teachers, for guidance counselors, for GPs, to recognize that, GPs, if they work with the entire family, they need to know that there are challenges to the family. So they need also to ask the questions of a 14 years old. And the same with teachers. I think that, it's not wise to wait until children have so many absenteeism from school and they are really not able to fulfill their expectations in school. I think that we want to do that much earlier. I think we want to recognize that this is really a group that deserves our attention. And as you said, there is a lot to do, but I think that the first thing is to sensitize the people who should be proactive.
That's right. It's everybody around that carer who can have an impact.
Exactly. And I think that, the school system is probably, in my humble opinion, the first milieu where this awareness has to be increased. And I can tell you from my limited experience, it's not easy. And again, it's not easy because I think that, schools are really bogged down with all kinds of, competing expectations. It's very difficult. But I think that schools are really the porte d'entrée for this kind of initiative.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully over time there will be some initiatives and to bring that to the forefront, and certainly something that you've helped to put on our radar as well, as a really big need in the community.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear, because I think that this is the small steps that we are trying to make. We do hope that maybe in 2021 we would be able to have another symposium, again, with a bigger involvement of young carers. And gradually, look, for us, it's a sidekick. So it's not really something that, we can, we have a dedicated resources and we are going to, push it forward. And also, you can push it as quickly as you can. You are very much dependent on the reception.
That's right.
You really have to do that in a very careful and astute way, that you are not going to push people away, but you are going to, bring them closer to the cause.
Well, I think just like with a study like you've done that, is, when you bring evidence-based information, it's hard to argue with that. And when you're presenting really strong arguments to engage, all the different stakeholders who are involved.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this has been really great to have you on this morning, Ella, and to talk about AMI-Québec and to talk about young carers, for our community in the Outaouais is definitely extremely, extremely appreciated. And, we're certainly going to continue to promote your services within our community on Facebook, our website, even referrals. So,
well, yeah, that's wonderful. I really, I appreciate this opportunity. Our website is being updated regularly. So
Great.
I do encourage people in your, region to take advantage as much as they can of our services. As I said, I don't know if I did say, but we also do counseling over online. So this is, this is really important because we used to do that face-to-face, but this also transitioned to video conferencing or telephone. So this is absolutely people can take advantage of also.
Wow, and that's a great service now for us to be able to access that counseling part, because that's something that we don't have very much of. We don't have support groups in English. There's an organization called L'Apogée who do provide psychosocial support. They'll do it in English, but we don't have the programs or the support groups, and that's pretty much not just for mental health, but for pretty well everything. There is cancer, so that's a really great resource to be able to turn to.
Yeah, we welcome anybody from the English community, and we will try to be as helpful as we can.
Yeah, and we'll keep our links together.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Ella and Danielle. Thanks so much for joining us. This was such a great chat. You guys are so passionate and so knowledgeable, and it's just great that you were able to come on and share all of this with our community. So just wanted to say thank you to you guys, and we will make sure that we will share not just the website link, but your summer newsletter as well, so that everyone can read that and know where to find you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.